All right, so I got a chance to listen to Paul on ESPN this was on Monday, and he's clearly thinking that Alabama's going to win this game. He said, "I am not feeling the love right now for the Dogs. 2 weeks ago, they were ruling the nation. The game against Kentucky has a lot of people very nervous. Carson Beck was not good, and he talked about Tate Ratledge getting hurt. He said they are heading to Tuscaloosa, which is never good for the Dogs. Paul, Georgia's 2-1 this century in Tuscaloosa, just for the record. Um, Look, plenty of truth in there. The game against Kentucky was not a good look at all for Georgia. Didn't mention the South Florida game, but that's okay. Alabama corrected that with their game against Wisconsin. Look, no, I don't. I think the momentum of the public talking class has gone against Georgia, and that's fine. I think they have earned that with the way that they played against UK up there in Lexington. Things got to be put in context, but that's okay. That's not always the case in what we do. What we do is we talk about what we feel at that moment. When Alabama absolutely destroyed Georgia in Atlanta in 2021, there was not a lot of hope, discussion about how Georgia was going to correct that. And they did. Not only they whipped Michigan's ass, they beat Alabama pretty solidly in Indianapolis, actually, if you think about it, with a 15-point win for the national championship. So we're always prisoners of the moment. I mean, what have you done for me lately? It's a great song by Jody Watley. Jody Watley, come on. 1980s pop reference on here. But it's easy to look at it that way. I do want to say, though, whether Georgia wins the game or not, the team that plays in Tuscaloosa is going to be a different team than played in Lexington. And you're looking at, according to Kirby. Now we're going to see a little bit later this week with the injury report. I'm sorry if the people at the SEC office. I don't know what else to call it other than the injury report. I think it's called a participation report, but anyway, the Georgia's defense, to me, played pretty well against Kentucky. Not a great Kentucky team, and Kentucky got a lot of run yardage, but it was on volume. Now, what does that mean? You can't stop the run? Might not be able to so hot, but they sure did stop the pass. And with Jalen Milroe, as well as he's played lately, like all quarterbacks, he can go up and down in for games too. I mean, you look at last season, how hard and difficult a start that he had. He finished great. He was not unbelievable against Georgia, I will say that, but he won the game. So, but he really had rough moments. Against Texas, Texas A&M, Arkansas, those. And in Georgia, I don't think he played unbelievable, but he played again well enough to win 3 of those 4 games. That kid's been through that guy's been through a lot. But this is probably the best defense he will see. Perhaps this season. Well, Tennessee's defense is pretty good too. Now let's not act like they're not good too. The other thing about this game, as it relates to Kirby and Georgia, which is what most of y'all are watching for, Georgia's really good in these situations. Actually, these tight, these games that are allegedly going to be decided by 4 points or fewer, according to Las Vegas. Georgia's been very good under Kirby in those times. I can go through a lot of them, but like the Rose Bowl, that was a one. I think Georgia was favored by 1.5. The national championship game in Indianapolis, Georgia was a 3 or 3.5 point favorite. They're not in this position a lot, but they do pretty well. They are 8 and I think they're 9-5 against top 5 teams. I mean, that's pretty good. Ohio State game was about this. The Baylor game again in 2019 season before COVID was this way, and there were other. I would have to go through the list, but Kirby's done a pretty good job in these scenarios. On the road, he's won against a lot of ranked teams. They've not played on the road against top 5 teams very often. They played in Tuscaloosa where they lost. I'm not remembering. Well, most of their confrontations with top 5 teams, understandably, have been in either bowl games or playoff or whatever, So, Clemson, where they were an underdog in Charlotte, That felt wrong. For me, anywhere from Georgia being favored 1 to 4, I don't think it's going to get higher than 4. I doubt it will get to 4, but whatever. It could get down to a pick 'em. I don't. That'd be a heck of a movement, though, I have to say. But we'll just see what happens on Thursday. These situations, Kirby's been pretty good in those situations. The losses have come to LSU and SEC championship game. I talked about Tuscaloosa in 2020. Oh man, I can't remember all of them. Alabama in the national championship game in 2018. So there have been some scenarios where they've not done it. It's not been a lot on the road because it just normally you're playing in neutral sites. And I mean honestly, Paul's been around Alabama long enough to remember the Man Enough game. Georgia's only played in Tuscaloosa 3 times this century, which is a crime for the record. But when you want Missouri, Texas A&M in your league, this is what it is and how it goes. I personally would prefer the classic SEC teams to play one another more often, but hey, it's what it is, and someone has to play in Columbia, Missouri. But the games in Tuscaloosa have been classics. The 20 game, maybe not, I would say. But, in 2002, that game, Georgia, I believe, was an underdog. Someone can correct me. I'm going to look that up. But they definitely were an underdog in 2007 when they went to Tuscaloosa. I watched, what I did the night before that game? This is, and he can chime in anytime. I went to go watch Ben Jones play at Bibb County High School in Alabama. And very quick story about Ben. That guy is something else. He was killing people that night. And that guy was amazing with how good he was. And, I remember talking to him. Of course, his father had passed away a while before that. Yeah, Alabama was favored by 3.5 in 2002 when Billy Bennett kicked it in. They were favored by 3 when they lost in overtime. So in this scenario, they're actually going to be the underdog, which is extremely rare at Alabama at home. I'm not sure. I'm sure other people know better, but I'll look right now. Where they've been the underdog at home, I know they were in 07 against Tennessee and LSU. That's it. I mean, even the Joe Burrow team was an underdog to Alabama. So it shows you what people think of this game. Of where Georgia's at. They're like, they played bad against Kentucky, but who really cares? Oh, and I see, okay, it's not listed for some reason. But why? What is happening here? But I think that, if you go and execute, Alabama was a 5-point favorite against Joe Burrow and company, and they lost by 5, but they got blown out, and it was very similar to. It was not dissimilar to what Alabama did to Georgia in 2008 in Athens. I think the other thing that's looming over this, if you want to call it that, is, and it's all connected, is Nick is not coaching in this game, and I'm not aware of a coach that had more success in big moments against Georgia than Nick Saban. I mean, Steve Spurrier dominated Georgia, but Nick was going up against good Georgia teams most of the time. I mean, Spurrier, one of the games was the 1990 team, which was a losing record team, the 93 team, the 94 team, the 95 team, 96 team. These were not good teams. He beat them, he beat 97, 98, or no, excuse me, he beat 96, 98, 99, 2000, and 2001. I mean, those were not elite Georgia teams by any stretch. He wasn't coming close to dealing with what Georgia is right now. Nick did. And he had success winning a national championship in 2017, won the SEC championship in 18, won the SEC championship in 21 and in 23. I mean, those are trophy games. And he went 4-1 in trophy games against Georgia with Well, I should add at 5-1 with the 2012 game against Mark Richt. They have been the games for Georgia-Bama when they get together are usually classics. Usually, now not. I mean, you got two for every 2002. There's a 2003. For every 2007, there's a 2008. Where like in 2008, Alabama bludgeoned Georgia, beat them bad in Athens. The last time they were in Athens, before that in 2003, I felt bad for Alabama that day. I mean, Georgia was killing them. Thomas Davis, David Pollock, it was brutal. I think they won at 37-20. I don't know, but it wasn't close. They were out for blood, and they got it. And for every for every 2017, there's a 2021 where one team wins the national championship and the other one didn't. So Nick though through that time just had the better program, and it's going to be curious to see if Kalen DeBoer can match what Kirby's done. One game is not going to make someone have a better program than someone else. We will act like that on Saturday night and Sunday, but the fact is, neither of these two guys are going anywhere. I mean, Alabama, they've done what they're supposed to do so far this season. Georgia did too. They just didn't play well against Kentucky. Alabama didn't play well against South Florida. Okay. But, I may be wrong. I would imagine not the problem here is Tennessee, but what I was about to say is, of course, Texas doesn't play Tennessee. I think Georgia-Bama rematch is more likely than Georgia-Texas in the SEC championship game, because Alabama has a pedigree that we're used to. We know it. It's not new. They hadn't forgotten anything. Their default is to win. So is Georgia's. So. This is great, and I know the lead in here was Paul, and Paul knows better than they're headed to Tuscaloosa has never been good for the Dogs. Paul, they've won 2 of the last 3 times they were in Tuscaloosa. I mean, yeah, they got beat pretty bad in 2020 when they were leading at the half or whatever the hell was going on in that game. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I mean, I was at that game. I was I was one of the few people that went to all of those games, and that night, that's not the way. I mean, what we're getting into now is much more the way that it should be. Yeah, Georgia was winning that game at half, and they were not the better team. But and I was surprised that they could have taken a touchdown lead in, but Will Reichert stroked in a 52-yarder, man. I mean, these long field goals, and then it just went, That Alabama team and the Georgia team too, but that Alabama team had so many good offensive players: Najee Harris, Waddle, Devonta Smith, Mac Jones for sure. But it was the offensive line that was one of the best offenses. It was not Joe Burrow and LSU, but it was close. I mean, those guys could run up and down the field, but I mean. That was Alabama didn't get the lead until 4 minutes to go in the third quarter. So, I mean, let's not act like that. I mean, too many turnovers for Georgia. Look, it's a very difficult place to play, but it's not like you can't win there. And, we'll just see. I mean, Stetson went 18 for 40 for 3 interceptions. You're just not going to win like that. And, Georgia ran on them, 145 yards. Just as many as Alabama had rushing, but it was the receiving. It was 400 yards receiving. I mean, that's nuts. And, could that happen? Could that happen Saturday night? Doesn't seem like it, but someone's winning this game, and we're definitely all going to overreact. Make sure you're watching us on Riding Home. We'll see you after the game.